Winter is coming. Hello again YouTube, and welcome to winter. I actually quite like winter, and I love getting my winter training miles in. Just getting through the door on those shorter, wetter, colder days really does make it feel like you made it count somehow, whatever you were doing. For me, summer is when you get faster, but winter, that's when you get stronger. So if Mr. Merckx is indeed correct, then every winter mile is moving you up the field. So in today's video, I'm going to share a few thoughts about the kit that I use to get me through winter, starting with my recently recommissioned winter bike, but also talking about my running and cycling kit. Right, let's get things moving by looking at that bike. So, this is my trusty old Trek 2.3 alloy roadie. It's about 10 years old right now and was my first proper road bike. Although that makes it a bit special to me, it got relegated to winter duties when I added the Domani to the fleet. Recently though, it's had a total break after the Evo replaced the Domani became the winter bike, and the 2.3 became a wall ornament. Are you following this? But the recent nut and bolt restoration of the Domani means that this is now my go-to summer bike. The 2.3 is back in the game for winter, and the Evo might actually end up getting sold. Watch this space. I'll be honest though, a couple of years on the wall and a total lack of prep before being laid up had done the old alloy no favours. This bike needed a new bottom bracket, new rear brake caliper, partial recable and a new rear derailleur. Now, like the Domani, parts for this vintage of 105 group set do seem to be getting harder to find, but as luck would have it, I managed to source the brake caliper, bottom bracket and a similar vintage Ultegra derailleur, all from my spares box. Don't let anyone ever tell you that hoarding is a bad thing. In fact, I might start buying up some spares for both the Domani and 2.3 while I still can. I do wish I'd videoed the recommissioning process though, because the rear caliper gave me a fairly good fight after finding the stainless steel sleeved fastener had seized into the frame. I'm glad to report that I won the day with a blowtorch and a hammer, but that did result in some paint loss, which I rectified with the only black aerosol paint I had to hand. You can barely spot the touch-up, eh? Like the Domani, this bike had been wearing a set of American classic Aero 423s, and like the Domani, they are now officially retired, given that the wear indicator on the front wheel is no more than a distant memory. I've replaced them with this lovely set of Fulcrum Racing 900 C17 wheels, which were a bargain, just £113 delivered from Wiggle, and almost look like they've been made for the bike. Personally, I think that cheaper wheels make absolute sense in winter, and sometimes even in summer, so I'm looking forwards to seeing how they roll. I've shod the Fulcrums with a pair of Vittoria Zaffiro Pro folding tyres. Again, these were another Wiggle bargain at just £12.99 each. Get them while you can. For me, a winter tyre needs to do two things. Firstly, it must grip as well as it can, and secondly, it needs to end every ride containing the same air that it started with. As you may know from my other videos, I've become a real fan of the Vittoria Pro Slick version of this tyre, so if these are on a par with that, I'll be a happy chap. For the more technically minded viewer, the bike is fitted with a Pioneer single-sided power meter and Look Keo 2 Max pedals. I'll also be running my Garmin Varia radar and front light, which I'll go into more detail in this video. And what self-respecting winter bike would be complete without the obligatory frame-mounted Topeak mini pump, just to let people know that you're not afraid to spend 20 minutes trying to get 15 psi into a tyre if the needs must. As I said at the start, this is a bit of a special bike to me, and I'm reminded of that every time I ride it. It's all day comfortable, planted on the road, and has a paint scheme that looks as striking today as it did the day I bought it. I've said before that Trek do paint schemes really well, and I think that this is just another example of that. It feels so good to be riding it again. So that's the bike covered. And here's just a few thoughts on the kit that works for me when I'm riding it. Now, I'm going to start with the lights because that, to me at least, is probably the most important accessory for winter riding. My personal choice for road riding is the Garmin Varia light set. I just love the way the front light mounts directly under the head unit, and the rear also doubles up as a radar, and that will give you an instant visual prompt of approaching traffic. Now, you will need a compatible head unit to use the radar, but any of the recent Edge units or even the Phoenix Multisport watches will work with it. You can see the radar in action here, so the coloured lines on either side of the display show that there's a car incoming, and they will change from amber to red if it's coming in hot. It tracks multiple vehicles too, showing each as a moving dot, and the rear light also ramps up its intensity and its flash rate as cars get closer, just to try and increase the driver's awareness. You can control the lighting mode through the head unit also, with 3 options: solid, flashing or off. Now that's handy if you stop and you want to save your battery, and believe me, in the case of that front light, you'll probably want to salvage all of the battery life that you can. On the solid setting, this thing really will drain a battery in under an hour. Now because of this, I generally only use it in flashing mode to get me seen, and I back it up with a Halfords 1600 lumen front light if I actually need to see where I'm going. See the video I made on Halfords lights for a review of that beast. My rear-facing lighting also extends to shoe covers. I'm using Skinz all-weather LED overshoes. Now these are a relatively lightweight overshoe that has a little LED in each heel. And having followed a mate who rides with these, I can tell you that those little flashing LEDs, they're really effective. Although they are a bit on the thin side for a shoe cover, I find them warm enough for most winter days, but be warned, they are very closely fitted and are a huge pain to get on. I've had wetsuits that were easier to get into. In fact, they're so tight, they'd probably be relevant for something like time trailing. But they really do keep the cold out, so I'll forgive them for not being the most user-friendly thing in the world. And when you factor in that little light unit, well, I really like them as an overall package. Now, as a general rule, most of my other riding kit, tights, jerseys, base layers, etc. is Planet X. I think that they make really nice kit that doesn't break the bank and looks good into the bargain. Now, it wouldn't be a winter ride if you didn't need a jacket, would it? And I personally don't think that you can beat the Altura night vision jackets for winter riding. Okay, they aren't exactly what you'd call aero, but the reflective panels on them really make them pop when a headlight hits them. So, you know, I'm very comfortable trading just a little bit of speed for the increased safety. They're pretty water resistant too, and I personally find them plenty warm enough, even with just a jersey underneath most mornings. So up until now, it's all been about the bike, hasn't it? And I don't have a problem with that because it really is all about the bike, isn't it? But I do run too. Well, I call it running. I suppose some would call it walking. Some might even call it suspended animation. But whatever, I enjoy it all the same. I suppose that the running kit is probably the easiest to cover. So I'm just going to focus on illumination, again, and footwear. Because let's be honest, the rest of your running kit is going to be so personal that there won't be a lot I could reasonably add. A lot of my running is done along country lanes, in the road and often before dawn, so having a good head torch is actually really important to me. I find that I don't often use it to see where I'm going though, but I do use it to make sure that oncoming cars can see me. My personal choice is the Petzl Myo RXP. Now I've had this for years. I'm not sure that they make this exact model anymore, but they do have several equivalents on their website. For its size, the light output from this is amazing. It's powered by 3 AA batteries, so I don't have to remember to charge it, and I can even put a spare set of batteries in my pocket if the current ones are looking a bit marginal. The light mode is selectable, so you can kind of dim it for longer run times, and there's a flip down lens that gives you a choice of what I'd call a tight pencil beam or kind of flood lighting. Like with cycling though, being seen from the front is only half the story, so I've added an old bike light bungeed around the battery pack on the back of my head. This is nothing fancy though. In fact, I actually got this light free from somewhere, I think. But having a bright LED flashing on the back of my head along those dark unlit lanes really does give me a certain sense of security, and I can honestly say that I've never had a close pass from a car or lorry, so clearly it's doing the trick. Okay, finally, let's talk about the one thing that can easily make or break a run for you, footwear. Now I've got a very wide forefoot, and that can give me huge problems with both running and cycling shoes. For running, it has to be Brooks shoes for me, mainly because they offer a 2E extra wide fitting, which happily accommodates my Ronald McDonald feet. On road, I'm using their Glycerin 15s, and for trails, it's Cascadia 14s. The Glycerins are one of the most plush shoes I've ever used, and the Cascadias, well, they're light and they have a pretty decent tread pattern that help keeps me upright. I've paired both of those with Enertor Insoles for extra shock absorption, and they really do seem to work. Now they are pricey at 30 quid a set, but I've run all distances up to half marathons with these with few problems, which in my head justifies the cost at least. So there you go, just a few thoughts on the things that work for me personally in winter. I think, like I've observed a couple of times throughout that, what works for me might not work for you, and the converse will be true. So actually I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on any of the things I've covered here, and actually I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on if there's something you use in winter which would really make my life easier or make everyone's life easier. So, you know, don't be shy. If you've got something like that, please share it in the comments because I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, thanks for watching this one. There is another video coming out before the end of the year. I'm going to do an update on the Ruvi review because they've updated the app, and I understand it might actually work with the Watt bike now, so that'll be interesting. Anyway, in the meantime, thanks for watching once again, and have a happy and healthy Christmas, and stay safe, stay healthy, and see you all in 2021.